Hey, Merry Figmas everyone. We're here with the latest Dragon Ball release for the S.H Figuarts line, and that is Android 17 and 18 from Dragonballsuper, the Tournament of Power saga. Now, these two, well, for me at least, I think actually the 17 design is actually pretty cool. Like, I mean, as you all know, I'm not a huge super fan, but I did actually quite like what they did with 17, with the whole Ranger look and his kind of new side story. Definitely disappointed in the styling that they went with 18. I feel like she's got a bit more, well, not necessarily class, but, you know, a bit more. She's always into fashion. She's always looking at clothes in the show, the series, and the shops. So I would have thought they would have gone with something a bit more complex than just a jumpsuit. Though I do feel like the figure does look pretty good. Does a good job of representing her, but we'll get a closer look at the actual detailing of the figures shortly. But first, let's jump into the actual boxes themselves. Now, exactly the same as usual, being a premium bundle release, they have the Tamashii Web logo on the front, and again, these are the Japanese release, so it may differ if you're in a different region. They both have the Tamashii quality seal on them, and on the back we have the usual nice selection of images showcasing the different features and poses that they can do. Now, both of them do come with some effects, which is really nice to see. Something that every figure should come with, in my opinion. But yeah, let's start with the... Oh, who should we start with? 17, yeah, let's do it. We'll go with 17, we'll pop them open, check out its accessory, detailing, articulation, then we'll move over to 18, then we'll compare them together, as well as with their original versions for both a size comparison. Okay, so starting from the left here, we've got 3 additional faces, the slight smirking, the sort of teeth gritting, then the full-on mouth open screaming look. It's also got the small key blast. Now this one actually comes with 18 as well, however 17 does have an additional one that covers his hand, which is pretty cool. On the right hand side we have the hair, which is blowing in the wind, which is really nice, and then we've got additional 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of hands. So the open palm ones, the sort of gripping ones, and then the bottom ones down here actually have a peg which will connect to the key blast. So it is pretty cool, since this is obviously quite small and fiddly. Okay, so we've got him out of his packaging now. One thing I want to point out first off is the detailing on his jumper here, all tucked in. You've got the nice ruffles. I think that looks really good. And then on the pants you've got all the gene markings as well for the pockets, down the side here, and even up on the top pockets with some extra silver colouring for those metal bits that you do have on your jeans. And he also has the belt along there as well, which I think looks really nice. You've got some weathering shading on his jeans as well, so it does look like it's faded, which I think looks really cool. His shoes aren't too bad, got some extra grey colour on top, and then his jumper as well with the green and I guess white or light grey colour. And then on his left arm he does have the orange armband which does say Ranger, which I think looks really nice. If we swing around a bit faster here, one thing I want to point out is the MIR on his jumper. I feel like it's down a little bit low, it's kind of clipping, kind of bugs me a little bit myself. I kind of wish it was a little bit higher, as it does look like it's kind of chopped off. But yeah, I think overall, aesthetically, I think he looks really cool. I actually don't mind this design, as I mentioned earlier, as far as the new versions or updated design and look for the characters from Dragonballsuper. So far, I believe the sizing and everything like that looks very similar to the original 17, but we will do a size comparison at the end of this video with all 4 characters. One other thing I want to point out is the skin colour on this character. I feel like it's a bit off for me personally. When I first took him out and sort of natural daytime light, it just looked a lot greener. It could be kind of reflecting off his green jumper as well, which doesn't quite help, but he kind of had that weird, slightly sickly look. And it's one thing that I'm not a huge fan of this figure so far. However, I must say, it's night time now when I'm filming this, and I think his skin colour looks a bit better when it's softer lighting. So it may vary a little bit, and depending on what setup you have in your cabinets and so forth, he may look better than elsewhere. So that's something to keep in mind. I do feel like his head is sticking forward a little bit far, but we'll check that out when we go over articulation, which we can do now. So starting with his head, he's got the usual tilt on the side, though the longer hair on him does kind of hinder his movement. Looking forward, I think is really nice. and going back again it gets hindered by his hair. One thing I do feel though, well, firstly that's pretty cool, you can shift his head forward quite far on his neck joint, but when you push it back into well, as far back as it can, I feel like it's sitting forward a little bit too far. It doesn't look too weird, but I kind of feel like his head maybe should be sitting back a little bit further. Let me know in the comments below what you think, if you think it looks right or not. Personally for me it just feels a little bit off. Not necessarily wrong, but yeah, it just feels like it's in a slightly wrong position. Moving over to his shoulders, all the joints move pretty smoothly, and it comes around decently far. A little bit more range of articulation there would have been quite nice, and you can kind of see the joint on the inside there, which isn't too pretty, but depending on the angle you have, it does get covered reasonably well. You do have a nice deeper kind of cut in here, so that is where you can kind of swivel around a little bit further compared to some figures, but maybe if they made it a bit deeper, we could have got some better range of articulation there. But his arm will kind of swivel on that butterfly joint, so it's not too bad. You do have the swivel on the actual upper joint as well, and then the elbow range of articulation, again pretty standard I feel. His hands have a pretty decent joint in them, moves around quite well. His hands seem kind of on the large size for his body, but he does have the gloves on as well, which probably does add to the thickness. Now down to his torso, you got the upper movement on top there, and if you swivel around too far you do get a slight gap, but I don't think it's too bad. Forward and back, it's a little bit stiff. You do have some movement there, but at the moment at least not too much. You can kind of force it forward a bit more. There you go. So depending on the positioning, it does get a little bit stuck, but you can kind of get him leaning back a decent amount. And then his waist, he swivels, and one thing that I think is quite cool, the belt here is actually separate to his pants as well, so that does help you get a little bit more motion going around, instead of just being stuck in that one spot, since the design of his clothes kind of does hinder that motion a little bit, if the belt wasn't independent of the rest of his pants. Now for his legs, got okay range there. Again, a bit more would have been quite nice, and then got the swivel on the top part as well. But the knee joint is actually really nice on this one. It swings around and it covers it really well actually, so I think that is really nice. Actually it's kind of the same with the elbow, the way it's designed there, you still got the plastic which will kind of cover the joint, so it actually looks pretty smooth. One thing, if you do push this out too far, you can see the inner plastic joint kind of pops out, and if you try and put it in, it might get stuck, so you just kind of have to make sure you have it inside the hole before you push it in further. Moving down to the ankles, yeah, feet move really nice, got some really good range on there, and the jean folding and moulding there I think looks really nice. Okay, jumping over to the faces now, I think yeah, the detailing, the printing of the eyes and eyebrows and mouth are looking really nice, and the sculpting of the nose is good as well. It looks like 17. Besides the skin colour, complexion, I don't really have any issues with the faces, but let's jump over to the other ones and check out the detailing. This is the second face you get. It's the kind of slight smirk one, again, which I think looks really nice. And then you also do have the silver paint on the earrings, which was a little bit hard to see when the face is on the body. The next face up is the slightly teeth gritting one, and again I think this looks pretty good. The printing and the placement of the eyes I feel look pretty nice. You've got the extra detailing on the bridge of the nose as well, which is pretty cool. Next face up is the open mouth screaming. I think again this looks really nice. You've got the eyebrows kind of arching up and over, and then the mouth is open as well, which is pretty nice, and you've got the tongue and teeth all separately and cleanly painted. The additional hair is separated into the two parts, and you can just slot the new faceplate on, and then the hair goes over top of that. Pretty easy to use, and it's got a nice joint as well, ball socket, and the hair just pops on pretty well without any issues, which is really nice. I actually think that this head sits on the body better than the other one actually. When I mentioned earlier how it looked like the head was kind of forward a bit too far, this one kind of sits on in a better position, I believe. The wrist joints on them look pretty nice and substantial. The hands themselves as well clip on without too much issue. Decently tight but not too tight either. And do have the extra wrist swivel on there as well, which is pretty cool for the cuff of the glove. Now this hand has the peg on it, which we can use for the yellow key blast, which just slots on, and yeah, that looks really nice. Now with the peg in there, you can get the key blast directly on the hand in the palm without worrying about it falling off, which is pretty cool. So you can kind of get him up into some cool poses as if he's kind of running up, about to throw that blast in. The other effect you have is this green one, which slots over his fist. It's kind of like a key blast punch, and all this one does, it slots over the fist right on the hand light. So I think that's pretty cool. It's nice to get some more unique effects and blasts with the characters, which is really nice. I think here Kefla, which is coming next month, also has some cool key blast wheels, so it's going to be quite fun to get hold of those as well. And this has some nice colour. It's kind of got the silver on the tip, and then it's got the nice clear green that goes through it as well. So yeah, that covers the articulation, stylings, and the main effects that come with 17. So we'll put them to the side now, and we'll get 18 out and see what she looks like before we jump into the comparisons. Okay, so here goes 18 out of her box, and in terms of accessories, pretty similar to what we get with 17. We've got the 3 additional faces on her. We've got the slightly frowning look, then we've got the smiling, teeth gritting, and the open mouth as well. So not quite teeth gritting, but a bit more of an angry, unhappy look. We've got the same key blast, and then we've also got additional arms for 18, which will represent her hands and hoodie pocket. That's quite cool. Moving on, we've got the different hair for the slightly wind swept look as well, and then we've got additional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of hands. Again, we've got ones with the peg for the key blast and the different grips and holds that she uses. And obviously in the center we've just got the straight, pretty basic jump suit, tracksuit look for her. Anyway, let's take her out and check for her final finish. So with her tracksuit, we've got the nice lines that run all the way down her arms and legs, which I think looks really cool. On the back it's pretty basic, though we do have some extra rippling on the bottom of her jumpsuit, which is nice, and some folds in the clothes. One thing I really love about this figure is actually the shoes. You've got the duotone there with the white sole and the laces. I think the sneakers on her look extremely nice. She also has the silver zip down her jacket, which I think looks pretty good too. Her face painting and sculpting I think looks nice too. One thing I found a little bit weird was actually her hair colour. I didn't quite expect it to be so pastely, so not as vibrant as her DBZ version. I'm not sure if I like it or dislike it. It's just different. What do you guys reckon? Let me know below if you prefer the more softer pastel look compared to the more vibrant yellow on the Z version, especially the event exclusive. Her earrings are also coloured silver, which looks nice, and she does have a slight eyebrow colouring on there. It's like a slight darker version of her hair. But yeah, overall I'm pretty happy with her so far, despite not being a big fan of this design. It looks pretty good, the shoes are cool. Yeah, but the main thing is going to be articulation for this figure, since she is pretty basic otherwise. So yeah, let's take a look. Starting from the head, since she has the collar and the long hair, it does kind of impact the motion that she has, but she can still get a decent tilt range going on, and leaning forward and back on the head isn't too bad. Forward is definitely nice, back a lot more limited, again due to her hair and the collar. For the shoulders, again I think these are pretty nice, very similar to 17, nothing really different here. Again, everything kind of moves all in the same spots. And the elbows I think are really nice on this figure, and you get really good range. And again, due to that extra plastic design underneath here, it covers the joints pretty well actually. It's not too, I guess, ugly. It's not that much of an ugly joint, especially if it's only moved slightly. But you can get some really nice range on there, which is really cool. For the actual waist area, with a little bit more pressure, you can kind of lean forward an okay amount, not too much, a bit more range here would have been quite nice. Going back, again, not too bad. Again, pretty much the same as 17 really, not too much of a difference in their actual overall design. It appears just slightly different sizes, but leaning forward a little bit, you can kind of slightly mark the inner chest there, so it's something to keep in mind if you are pushing too far. The other part of the jack here, the motion, you might be a bit hard to see, but the center part here does move independently, so that's quite nice. So each part kind of interacts with each other to give you a bit extra range, which is quite nice. Now, I was expecting a bit more range of motion in her legs because it looks like a pretty similar design to the Bodycon figures, but it was definitely a bit more limited than I expected. You can't really get the splits there. It would have been nice if she had a lot more range in her legs there. You do have a swivel as usual, and then the leg does fold up quite nicely, pretty similar to the arms, and you do get really nice knee coverage as well. For the shoes, I think the fold of the design, actually the paint looks really nice, but it does kind of hinder the motion. You don't really get the tilt action going on too far, and leaning forward and back isn't too bad, but the paints do get in the way on the back side, which is a bit of a shame. If that was slightly curved, and you could have got a bit more range there. Shoes as usual have the toe tip articulation point as well. Overall though, I was having a good play for her while working yesterday, and yeah, she's actually really fun to play with, just kind of get into some cool poses and punching or kicking ones, all that. Just would have been nice if she could get a bit more of a range in her legs there to kind of do a high kick. I think that's the main point which is lacking for me in her articulation, is that waist and hip section. Moving on to the faces, the base one that comes on her is the slightly frowning one. It looks pretty nice. I do have some, I guess, mold markings on her forehead, which is a little bit of a shame. But yeah, otherwise the printing and her eyebrows and eyes look really nice. I think this is my favourite face though, the smiling one. I think this looks really nice. You got some crisp clean lines on her face. You got the extra highlighting dark line on her eyebrow as well. Next face up is her irritated look with a slight teeth gritting one, and this is quite nice. It's got some more subtle highlighting on her eyebrows with only a couple of small black lines on there, opposed to highlighting the whole eyebrow. It's kind of an interesting choice. I think it looks pretty good, and it doesn't really bother me that it's not all the way across. The shouting face on her looks really nice again. I feel like they're doing a really good job of these faces lately. A lot more kind of crisp, clean lines, and the paint job on the mouth is really nice too. And again, every face has her earrings covered silver. Switching out the face plates in here for the other head is the exact same method as 17. Just slot on the new face and the hair over top. Now you've got the wind swept look. Again, the joint on the inside is really nice and easy to use. I think that looks really nice. The wrist pegs on 18 are a lot more delicate than 17, so that's something to keep in mind if you are changing your hands. Just be a little bit more careful than you otherwise would. The key blast pops on the exact same way as 17, and it just covers that peg nicely. And yeah, there you go, you've got her holding her key blast. Though 18 only comes in for one, but the other feat is her hands and pocket, so let's slot that on as well. Her arms just pop off. That's not too hard. They do have a somewhat decent peg though, so just going to grab them upper part in her arm and give them a swivel, and they should pop off without too much issue. The other arm here, you just have to line up the pegs and be able to push them on. Okay, it's a little bit hard to do on camera, so I just pop them on off camera, but you have the pegs pointing out in this direction. They went on pretty easy, and then we can just swivel it down, and yeah, there we go. It actually works pretty good. I was kind of wondering how they would be doing this effect, and yeah, I think it looks really nice. It doesn't really stand out too far unless you look on a weird angle, then you'll see the gap there. But yeah, otherwise it's a pretty unique way of doing a hands and pocket effect. We've got the event exclusive 17, 18 along with the two new ones here. And yeah, it's always quite interesting seeing old figures next to new ones. You can definitely see that the I guess technology and the quality overall has been increasing a lot. The new figures do look a lot better and are actually slightly larger. So I'm not really sure if that scaling is a good or a bad thing, but as you can see here, especially with 18 for the DBS one is definitely slightly bigger. Obviously the design for, I think these two, the Z versions, is definitely a lot better, but that's more down to a personal preference. I do also like the more yellowy, darker colour here for 18. And same with the skin tones on the DBS 17. I think it does look a lot nicer. The new one looks a little bit sickly, which is a shame. But yeah, overall I think the sizing looks pretty good, though the hair and faceplates are different. The 18 has the hair part of the faceplate, whereas the new one doesn't. And again, the older 18 has some extra peaks on top for the hair, so that's a bit of a shame, so you can't really interchange those. But yeah, overall I think it looks really cool. It's definitely nice to have both in the collection. I'm super excited now, amped, hyped, highly anticipating some new 2.0 DBZ versions of androids once they do dive deep into the Cell Saga. The heads aren't easily exchangeable either, since the peg is attached to the EE18 head, and then the 17 one doesn't appear to really come off easily. I don't really want to force it myself, so yeah, that's something that might be possible. If you do a peg change, maybe I'll switch some heads around, but it's not something that's easily doable straight out of the box. Anyway, let's jump into some final thoughts for the two new figures. So, final thoughts of both of these. Yeah, I am actually, when I first got them, I was like, yeah, I'm going to purge these from my collection straight away. But after having a play around, I might actually keep them. I mean, DBS 17 design is something that, yeah, like I said, I actually don't mind it. Overall, it's pretty cool. So if I do have a couple of DBS figures, he could go in with them quite well. Though I'm still not a big fan of that skin color. That is the main con for me with him. Otherwise, yeah, mostly just pros. Though the text on the MIR bit too low, would be nice if it was higher. But yeah, overall I like the joint design of the elbow. It covers everything nicely. The windswept hair is cool. The two effects he comes with is really cool as well. The writing of Ranger on this armband looks nice, and I like how the belt is separate from the pants, so it does help with that extra bit of articulation. Though I would have kind of liked to see a bit more detail on his shoes, but I guess that is more of a overall character design issue. So yeah, the main cons, as I mentioned, is the skin color, and I think how his head sits, especially with the other head, is a little bit too far forward. But yeah, otherwise a pretty solid figure. On to 18 herself. I kind of like her more than 17, but not necessarily for her figure or her character representation or anything like that, but she's actually a really fun figure just to play with. If you're, at least for me, when I was playing with her, I was kind of at work in some meetings or during lunch and so forth, just kind of pick her up for a few moments, put her into a cool pose, and then move on. So if you want to practice posing, I think she's a pretty cool figure to have on your desk, since she is pretty simple. I think her basic design leads well into that, and her articulation overall is pretty nice, especially in her knees and arms. Though the main con is that hip leg articulation. I feel like that should have been a lot better, something more on the line of the body chant figures. Though another pro, the shoes look absolutely amazing. I like the fold and design of her legs. The face printing I think looked nice, and I think her skin tone is pretty good, though I feel like her hair colour is, at least as a personal preference, but it's slightly more of a con side for me. But yeah, overall, I think if you're into Dragonballsuper, you'll love both of these figures, and they're definitely a good addition to the collection, at least for your Dragonballsuper collection area. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below what you think of these figures. And I do apologise for the delay in getting this video out. Work has been pretty hectic this week, unfortunately. But hopefully from next month, everything will be back to normal and I'll be able to get these out on release date. There'll also be photos of these and 360 images going up on Rockchala within probably 1 week. I'm going to try and get it done as soon as I can. Anyway, again, thank you very much for watching. Cheers!